Welcome to another 21 Hats Dashboard, brought to you by our sponsor, The Great Game of Business. I'm Lauren Feldman, and I'm here with Tracy Bech to talk about the things we think business owners should be thinking about this week. Tracy is CEO of Starboard Collectives, which facilitates CEO forums, and she co-authored the latest edition of the 60-Minute CFO with her father. Welcome back, Tracy.
Hi, Lauren. Thank you.
Great to have you here. Tracy, we've been emailing a bit, and you brought up this notion that running a business is a little like, well, running. Can you explain what you're thinking?
You bet. So in a lot of the work that I do with businesses, we talk about business finance. And one of the ways that I really anchor it for people is understanding key ratios and understanding what those benchmarks and industry averages are for the business in question. And when you start doing that, you start understanding targets and what's possible, right? That's kind of the point of that exercise. And it started to make me think about how, while that is really good to do and understand, it also might be a little bit limiting. And the example that came to mind was Roger Bannister in running. He broke the 4-minute mile. And prior to doing that, doctors and physicians and coaches actually said that if a human were able to break the 4-minute mile, they would die. So they really firmly believed that it was impossible to run a 4-minute mile. And what actually happened is Roger Bannister did run a 4-minute mile. He actually ran it on a day where there were literal headwinds, right? And so people really doubted he was going to be able to do it. And then he did it. And once he did, 1,700 other people were able to run the 4-minute mile, something that we had beforehand thought would kill you. And it was interesting to me because as I tell people what the industry benchmarks are, or industry averages are for, let's say, your gross profit margin, I also want to say that, remember, that's what's possible today. But you might come up with something that makes something new possible, or in other words, the impossible possible. And I think it's really important to remember that we are going to continually evolve and change and not to be limited by what others are doing necessarily.
It's interesting. It kind of points out the notion that goals can help you achieve something, but they can also be limiting. If you think something isn't possible and you don't really try for it, you're not going to hit it. But if you're open to the idea that you might be able to exceed what's been done elsewhere, all things seem possible.
Yeah. And it's interesting. And you think, you don't want to put a goal out there that's so lofty it's unattainable. That can be very demotivating. But when you look at it the other way and think, this is possible today, but I don't want to rule out what might be possible tomorrow, and have that growth mindset and that opportunity seeking mindset, I think it is motivating, and it doesn't put these things that seem lofty or out of reach into this place where it's like, oh, that seems so hard, I don't even want to try. And so just knowing that, and the other way you can think of it is if you are, I do a lot of work with groups of CEOs, right? And they're all in the same industry. And when I start talking about the different, I'll just use gross profit margin as the example here. Between we look at each other's finances, and I can say company A has a 50% gross profit margin and company B has a 30% gross profit margin. It's very tempting for company B to think, oh man, we suck or whatever.
Sure.
And instead, the exercise is really to say, no, look what's possible. So if it's possible for them, it's possible for you. Let's take that, one step further and make sure we understand the differences in the way you're running your businesses. And, we get into strategy from there. And then even still, it's important to remember that the company A with that 50% profit margin, in 2 years, we might look and see that it's 52. So we don't want to get stuck thinking that these things that we measure and monitor are what they are, and they will always be what they're going to be. And that opportunity for growth and change is always there. And at one point we might think we would die if we were going to do it. But in actuality, if one person does it, 1,700 other people do it. It's just, to me, it's a fascinating phenomenon. And it's just one worth remembering when we kind of put ourselves into into the black and white world of numbers and finance and, what kind of the day-to-day business, can bring a little bit of complacency as well.
Can you walk us through a little bit, if you're talking to an owner who is disappointed in his or her gross profit margin, where do you look? How do you think about improving that?
Well, so the gross profit margin, just to make sure we all understand exactly what that is, that's your first level of profitability. So it's after you make your money, paying for everything that was required as a direct cost of making that money. So we can also think of it as cost of goods sold. So there's a couple different things that happen there. One is we want to optimize our expenses, right? So anything that we might already have that we're paying, you can think of it in two different ways, right? Does the money, is it something that we pay the same amount every single month? So if it's, like if you, for example, have to pay the rent on your store, that would be a fixed expense. It's the same amount every single month. Or if you have a salaried employee who sells your items, and you can't sell them without them, but they're on salary, you pay them the same amount every single month, and you're noticing that you're not making as much money as you would like, one thing you could do is you could experiment changing that cost from that fixed expense every month, the same amount every single month. You might change it to a variable expense. You might explore using an hourly employee. That way you can say, when we have more work, we pay more money, but when we have less work, we pay less money. So that's an example of changing something that was fixed to variable. But you might also look at it the other way around. If that person, would be better if you could optimize better by, putting them on a part-time salary, for example. So you want to look at where the opportunity is in changing an expense from fixed to variable. In other words, when you have more work, you pay more money. When you have less work, you pay less money. And the other opportunity, in that is how can you do it more efficiently? Right. So is there something in your business that is currently taking extra time or extra resources that can be optimized? And is there something you can pay for one time, a piece of technology, a training, a machine, a piece of equipment that would maybe cost you money today, but then take away some of that direct expense down the road? So there's that. And then the third thing is looking at ways to maybe change your business mix. So there might be some things that you do that are just going to have a lower margin, and it's always going to cost you more money to produce that work, and your margin will always be lower. And if you would like to see an overall blended higher gross profit margin, it might make sense to add in a line of business that has a slightly higher gross profit margin, where it's just easier to get that work done. It costs less, and that's going to overall bring your profit margin up. So you can kind of come at it a lot. There's a lot of things you can do to optimize your expenses. And there's also some things you can do on the revenue generating side to just produce higher margins as well.
Do you find that most of the businesses you start working with are fully aware of the different margins for their different offerings, whether it's a different business or a different product? Do they usually know what they should know to make the kind of decisions you're talking about?
No, they definitely don't know. So step one is learning what your margins are. For sure. And thank you for asking that question, because that's assuming we know what the margins are. And we want to get crystal clear on that. And one of the ways to do it is to start costing every job. So if you're making a website, or if you're running an ad campaign, really take yourself through the exercise of tracking every single cost back to that singular job. You don't necessarily need to start on a whole business line, all of the advertising or all of the web development, or whatever the case may be. Figure out one project that you did and figure out the margins on that. And you can sort of do postmortems. You can go back in time and you can pick on a client that you suspect was probably pretty low, and you can go back and pick on a client that you think is probably pretty high, and start to give yourself a range of what the margins might be. And as you do that over time, you will actually learn how to, if we're using this like an advertising or a web development agency model as an example, every project you bid, you will get more and more accurate, and you will aim for the gross profit margin that you want, right? And you might find that some were a little too high and uncomfortable, and maybe you didn't, have enough resources to service, and some were definitely over-serviced. So you will find what feels right for you. And then the next piece, if we're talking about these possibility thinkings and taking what we thought was impossible and making it possible, like the 4-minute mile, the next thing you can do is start to ask people adjacent to you and in your industry or in slightly similar industries how they're doing it and what's working for them. Not everybody gets their gross profit margins published like a running race. And so the way to figure out how other people are doing is by simply asking, right? And reaching out and having friendly conversations where you can to really understand what's possible for them.
Sounds like that kind of conversation or series of conversations could pretty quickly lead to a conversation about changing a business model altogether. Do you find that happens?
Yeah, so many times. And people, maybe not all together, or maybe definitely not overnight. But if you think about the way we have done business 10 years ago compared to today. And if you also think about the way we've done business
5 years ago, 4 years ago,
3,
given what we've been through.
Exactly. I can think of particular industries. I can think of even clients that I have who let's just use virtual versus in-office meetings. I had people who I coached through their very first Zoom call when COVID hit. And now it's a no-brainer. And they're going to, 90% of their meetings online. And that's when we're all really familiar with. But these are people that I would have assumed would never go for this, and they would die if given this option. And now it's become commonplace. So yeah, it's incredible, really, how adaptable our businesses are and we are in business as soon as we give ourselves that room to believe that it is possible.
I've been following, in particular, the restaurant industry, which has had such a difficult time going back to the beginning days of COVID. And I think there've been a lot of efforts to figure out different ways to do things. I recently highlighted a story in the Morning Report about a restaurant in Philadelphia that has decided to be closed on weekends, which is something I don't think very many restaurants would have thought was a feasible business model not too long ago. But they've decided to do it in part because it makes it easier for them to attract employees who can actually have lives. And the owners themselves are enjoying it, and they're finding that they can make it work, being open 5 days a week, but not on weekends.
Absolutely. And I think I followed that story, and if I'm not mistaken, they were also 8 a.m. to 5 p.m., right? Like, it was just like, we have to make this livable for our employees, because without employees, we can't do this. I also know someone in the food industry who is extremely focused on paying a livable wage for every single employee, down to the dishwasher. So you don't come in the door without making $70,000 a year, period, and that would previously have been considered impossible in right. Something like that. So I think it's incredibly inspiring. It's incredibly exciting. And, I always like to bounce between, what's current, like what's actually happening now, but don't get stuck there. What could be possible? There's a lot of opportunity there.
The last time you were here, Tracy, was early August, and you told us it wasn't too late to try to pull out the stops and try to hit your numbers for 2023. Is it still possible to do that?
Absolutely. Absolutely. We still have a nice chunk of the year as of, a quarter, and nothing is set in stone yet. So I very much encourage people to think creatively, using what we've just been talking about, what's, this 4-minute mile idea, and really, even if we also just talk about learning what your margins are, doing so between now and the end of the year is going to give you that opportunity to bid that next job or do that next project at the profitability that you want. You can any month, any week that you can go forward and do good work is going to positively impact that end of year timeline, for forecast, scenario, everything.
When do you suggest people start thinking about next year?
Now, definitely now. So planning when done, strategic planning for 2024 is nice to do, not on a super condensed timeline. It's nice to give yourself about a quarter, the last quarter of the year, to do two things. One is to reflect on how the current year has gone to date and give yourself some really well-informed guesses as to how it's going to end, because we are so close. So while I'm encouraging you that you can still change the script and make it happen, you're also getting pretty darn close to knowing what that might actually look like, in terms of, just the number of weeks we have left here. And then what we want to do is use this year to inform next year. And that's such a great starting point, because we don't have to start from scratch, and we are, the economy is going to change, everything's going to change, but it's not going to change a ton, right? We can do some incremental, again, guessing as to what's going to happen, and just start to write that plan. The other thing that's really nice to do, and is really a best practice that many, many, many business people and business owners don't do, is check in with your CPA. They would love to know how your business is doing at this juncture in the year, rather than finding out after it's over, because they're going to help you make sure that you've saved or paid enough in taxes to fulfill that liability. And they're also going to help you out in terms of what you can do to lower that liability. And again, the year's not over. So you're going to have all of this nice time. You're not going to feel rushed. You're not going to feel under the gun. And you can start making some really informed decisions in that realm as well.
I was recently at a conference for the Great Game of Business. They really emphasize planning and forecasting. One of the things they suggest is checking in with your customers and not being afraid to say to them, what are your plans for next year? Are we in your plans? Is that something that you've seen useful for businesses as well?
Oh, absolutely. Yes. Checking in with your customers, asking what's going on with them, and also sharing with them anything that you have going on. No one really loves surprises. So letting them know that they are on your mind, and, giving them things to think about, so that you are on their mind. All of these things just are so helpful. The third entity that I would add in there is your banker. If you carry, a line of credit, or if you have a lot of financing, or if you think you're going to need it, making sure that relationship is strong and solid, and again, no surprises, is a really nice way to just feel ready, right? Just kind of know where we are wrapping up and how things are going to play out in the coming year.
Tracy Bech is CEO of Starboard Collectives, which facilitates CEO forums, and she co-authored the latest edition of the 60-Minute CFO with her father. This episode was brought to you by the Great Game of Business, which helps businesses use an open book management system to help build healthier companies. You can learn more at greatgame.com. Thank you, Tracy. Appreciate you taking the time.
Thanks, Lauren. Thanks for having me.
Have a great week, everyone.